Hello, my name is Debbie and I work for Cheshire East Libraries, and I'd like to tell you about a book that I love. My book is Mudlarking by Lara Maiklem and published by Bloomsbury. I need to start by admitting that I didn't choose this book for myself. The history section isn't my normal habitat, but I took it out for my husband, and as it's been sitting on the shelf and the libraries are closed, I thought I'd give it a go. It seems apt that this is a book that should be stumbled across and found, because this book is all about finding lost things. The author, Lara Maiklem, has been a mudlark for nearly 20 years. She's a person who scavenges for usable debris in the mud of a river or harbour. Lara scavenges along the banks of the River Thames, London's longest archaeological site. She's a country girl at heart and found the river while seeking a refuge from the chaos of city life. But she shows a real appreciation of nature, the trees and birds and wildlife, the tides, and even the smells of the river. She's also become a master of tides, using tidal times and personal knowledge to work out how she can make the best of the low tides in order to fit in as much time mudlarking as possible. The book is like a journey which takes Maiklem from the tidal head of the river at Teddington down towards the estuary, with each chapter moving downstream and focusing on a different area and some of the more notable finds she has made there. Maiklem uses antique maps to identify where bridges, docks, grand houses and boatyards were, where things might have been lost or discarded into the river, and also knowing what lined the river helps her to identify the objects. Her earliest find is a Mesolithic flint tool, but she also visits a tree graveyard from about 6,000 years ago. She has Roman artefacts such as hairpins, medieval buckles, Tudor buttons, Georgian clay pipes and Victorian glass. But one of my favourite finds is a comma from a typeset used on a printing press, which was dropped into the river from Hammersmith Bridge around 1916 by the craftsman T.J. Cobden Sanderson. It took him around 170 visits to dispose of a ton of lead type. He wanted to prevent his business partner from getting hold of it. Much of the type, called Dove's type, has been found and then painstakingly reconstructed by a graphic designer called Robert Green, and it's used on the book cover. As well as the history of the object she finds, she also gives a history of mudlarking on the Thames. In the late 18th and early 19th century, a mudlark would be someone in abject poverty scavenging for objects to sell. The Thames would have been filthy, full of human waste and waste from the businesses that lined the river. And as late as 1957, the Thames was declared biologically dead by the Natural History Museum. Nowadays, the river is much cleaner and mudlarking is more of a hobby or maybe an obsession. And it's much more about discovering the history of the city by looking at what the tides uncover rather than from making a profit. Many of the historic finds have survived because they were buried in an anaerobic Thames mud, but they were made of materials like wood, leather, glass and clay, and once exposed by the tidal river would over time be worn down and eroded. But Maiklem muses on what we will leave behind for future generations. In our age of overconsumption of mass-produced objects designed to be quickly thrown away. This book is a gem, completely quirky and eccentric, and I'm fascinated by someone who has a passion for history, the patience to go searching, a willingness to get her hands and her knees dirty, and a willingness to ruin her best shoes. She has such an ease in how she tells her story, and a good balance between giving factual accounts of objects along with imaginative ruminations on the use of objects or the person who might have used them. But between you and me, I'm very happy to read about mudlarking, but I'm not tempted to go plodging around in the mud. Thank you for listening, and look out for more books we love coming soon.